Alright, here's a lesson on isosceles and equilateral triangles. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to label the parts of an isosceles triangle. So this first picture, because there's two tick marks, it's isosceles. The congruent sides we call the legs. And then the not congruent side, the one on the bottom, we call the base. And then the really important thing is what we call the angles at the bottom. These angles here are called base angles because they're along the base. And what we know, if you look at my two statements to the right here, it says if tick then whoosh, and if whoosh then tick. What that means is if you see a picture with tick marks, you're allowed to add whoosh marks. So what we know is that these angles end up being congruent, the base angles. And then the angle at the top, we call that the vertex angle. So it's just some terms. So if you see these, you're able to know where to position everything. So again, the very important thing is these two statements here is if you see tick marks, you get to add whoosh marks. If you see whoosh marks, you're going to add tick marks. So that's what we're going to go through right now in these next couple of examples. The other thing you have to remember is what we talked about in the last lesson, that a triangle's interior angles, if they're all inside, they're going to equal 180. So a triangle equals 180 degrees. We're going to use that a lot today too. Alright, so looking at example number 1, there are tick marks. So if tick, then I'm going to add whoosh marks. And make sure you're following along and writing this stuff down in on your sheets of paper so that way you have a copy of your own notes. So when I add the whoosh marks, that tells me something really important about one of the angles I'm trying to find here. Since there's whoosh marks now, if the one angle is 30, this angle is also going to be 30 degrees. So that gives me my first answer, x equals 30. And I'm going to switch colors here and show you how to find y next. So if I want to find y, I now know two of the angles. This is just like a problem you guys were doing in the last section. We're going to add 30 plus 30. Make sure you're adding two things together first. And that's going to give me 60. And then I'm going to subtract from 180. And that gives me 120. That is going to be angle y. Remember, because they're all inside, we have to use 180 to find what's missing. Alright, let's try number 2 now. So again, if you see tick marks, you get to put whoosh marks, but the whoosh marks are going to go along the base, along that side that doesn't have tick marks on it, so your whoosh marks have to go here. So just be careful. A lot of times if it's turned, I suggest that you turn the paper so the tick marks point up. Then the whoosh marks always go on the bottom. So that this would be one where I would turn the paper to look at it. So that tells me, if I look at the whoosh marks, that tells me that x is 65 degrees. I write it down. I also like to write it in the picture. And then I have to find the y angle. Again, now that we know two angles in the picture, we can add them together. Make sure you're adding first. That's going to be 130. And then I can subtract from 180 to find what that missing angle is. That missing angle is going to be 50 degrees. So y is 50. Alright, let's try a few more. And number 3, again, if tick, then whoosh. So you have to decide where to put the whoosh marks. That should be your first step. So the whoosh marks are going to go here. So this one is different because the thing that's missing is both of those angles. So there's nothing to fill in. So the key to these types of problems is that you're going to start with 180. I'm going to say 180 minus 40 to figure out how many degrees I have left in my triangle. Right now I have 140 degrees left, and that has to be split between both angles there. So the key here is we're going to divide that by 2. If I divide it by 2, it's going to give me what both angles are supposed to be to get to that total. So that angle is going to be 70 degrees. X is 70 degrees, and since they're congruent, y is also 7 degrees. And if you just did a quick check here to confirm, they're congruent like they're supposed to be because that's where we put the whoosh marks, so they have to be the same number. If I add 70 plus 70, that's 140, plus the 40 that was at the top gives me 180. So at the end, that's one thing you can do to check, is you can add them all together and make sure that you get 180 degrees. Now let's take a look at number 4. So again, the first thing we're looking at, there's tick marks, so we're going to add whoosh marks to the picture. Those are actually these top angles here. Again, if it helps to turn it, you can turn it to see where it goes. So again, in this one, we're missing the two that are congruent to each other. So we have to start with what we know about the whole triangle. We know the whole triangle is 180. So I'm going to subtract the 110 off of 180. That gives me 7 degrees left. And now I have to take that 7 degrees and I have to split it between the two angles. So I have to divide it by 2 to be able to split it between those two that are missing. And each angle is going to be 35 degrees. So x is 35 degrees and y is 35 degrees. So that's how you find angles. So that 1 and 2 were one type of problem, 3 and 4 were another type of problem. So there's two types of problems there to finding angles. The next two problems are finding x. When we're finding x, we're going to have to set up an equation. So it's still using those rules that I had written at the beginning. If tick, then whoosh. If whoosh, then tick. So if we look at number 1, this one actually has whoosh marks to start with. So if there's whoosh marks, I get to add tick marks. And then you have to remember what those tick marks tell you. Those tick marks tell me that those two things are equal to each other. They're congruent, so they're equal. So we're just going to set these equal to each other. And solve. Subtract 4. 2x is equal to 6, and divide by 2. So x equals 3. And now if you look at the next problem, we have tick marks. If tick, then, hopefully you said whoosh. If tick, then whoosh. So I'm going to put the whoosh marks in. 3x is equal to x plus 10 then, because the whoosh marks tell us they're equal. And you just have to solve this. Subtract x. 2x equals 10. Divide by 2. X equals 5. Alright, we got one more type of problem to look at. So these problems here step it up a notch. It says if all tick marks, then all whoosh marks. Meaning if it's equilateral, that's what all congruent sides mean, all tick marks, then the triangle is going to be equiangular, which means all the angles are going to be congruent. So first thing I'm going to do in this box is going to help you if you get stuck on a problem like this. It's a reference thing that you can look back at. Is if you see all tick marks and you want to find the angle measures, what you have to realize is all tick means we can put all whoosh marks. And then since we know that a triangle equals 180 degrees, we can actually figure out what each individual angle is going to be there by taking 180 degrees and dividing it by 3. Because they're all equal, we can divide 180 equally into 3 parts. Each angle is going to be 60 degrees here. 60, 60, 60. So that's something automatically we're going to know when we see all tick marks. So knowing that and looking at the first example, I see all tick marks, I can add all whoosh marks. Once you add all whoosh marks, you know that each of these is going to be 60 degrees. So if I want to solve for x here, I can just do 2x equal to 60. That's it. That's what I know that equals because it has all whoosh marks, and then we divide by 2. X is equal to 30. So that's kind of the key when you see that all the angles are equal, is you can automatically fill in that they are 60 degrees. And then the last one has all whoosh marks, so if all whoosh, then all, hopefully you said tick. We can put tick marks there, and that tells me that those two sides are equal to each other. It doesn't matter that there's that extra tick mark there. It just tells me that those two are equal, so we set them equal to each other. And we solve, divide by 4, x equals 7. So now your job is to do the next 4 problems on the note sheet. And you need to submit your answers through the Schoology quiz that I posted. You get more than one attempt on there, so please be honest with yourself for one. Don't just try and copy from somebody else, because I want you to try it yourself so you know that if you're understanding the material. But if you get it wrong, you get to try again. I gave you 3 attempts, so you can get it wrong a few times and still try again and see if you can figure out how to do the problem correctly. Because the goal would be you can do those problems correctly, and then you can do the homework. And then also don't forget when you're finished with the Schoology quiz that I do want you to take a picture of both sides of the note sheet and submit that onto Schoology as well. Okay? Have a great Halloween, and I will see you guys tomorrow.